Hello and welcome to Become the Teapot. I'm not Iain.
And neither am I.
What's all this? What's going on?
Iain, it's okay. We've got guests on for this show, remember? Kaite and Hayley, our girlfriends, for Valentine's Day.
Oh yeah. How can I forget?
That's all right, buddy. It's just for one episode. We're going to be asking them some questions about comic books and film and TV adaptations, having a little chat. Then we're going to discuss WandaVision, give our first impressions of that. Don't worry, there will be a spoiler warning. Then you can tell us all about what Easter eggs you found this week. See, that's exactly the same as usual. You like Easter eggs, right? Right?
Yeah.
What say we get started? Hayley, Kate, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. How are you both today?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, good.
I think probably it's best if we set the scene, establish what your familiarity with comic books, with comic book properties are. So, Kate, what is your familiarity with comic books and related products?
I know bits. I am in no way an expert. I'm pretty good with who sits in what universe, but as far as backstories and things like that go, I couldn't really tell you that much, other than what Ian's told me throughout the years.
So would you say it's more film and television based as opposed to comic books themselves?
Absolutely, yeah. I seem to have had a habit of dating men that love comic books, so I seem to have seen most of the films, but not really had any actual experience of the comic books.
So we could sit here and read off a list of comic book films, and you've seen them all.
Wouldn't necessarily. I just said most of them, or maybe all of them.
Howard the Duck.
And we could list a bunch of comic books and you wouldn't have read any of them.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. And Hayley, what would you say your familiarity was with the comic books?
I have approximate knowledge of many things. I am no way an expert, but I know bits and pieces of comic books that I have read, and lots of comic books which I haven't read and have looked it up. But yeah, absolutely the same with Kate. My familiarity is probably film, television, cartoons, video games, and often because of that, I've actually gone back and picked up a graphic novel or a comic book based on that. But yeah, I'm not an expert, but when I get time, I do enjoy dabbling.
You've read a bit of manga as well.
Oh, yeah. I often forget for some reason that manga does count. It is a comic book. Yeah, I used to read a lot of manga, mostly just shonen, but you kind of get to a point where I can't read 100 different volumes of One Piece, which is still going on. So I kind of put that aside. Kind of like reading shorter, more compiled things. So graphic novels that I've already finished. Comic books, which have been put into a big volume. Yeah, I have read quite a lot, actually, when you think about it, so...
Am I right in saying that you're a fan of the Scott Pilgrim books?
Do you know what? I haven't read them.
I honestly thought that you had.
No, this is something which I say approximate knowledge of. I've watched the film in the cinema. I was excited to see it, probably because of Edgar Wright more than anything else.
Yeah.
But no, I never actually went and read them, although they are in our house.
We've got 2 copies of them.
Because they do have that style of the manga, which I think you would definitely enjoy the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I absolutely know I would, but I just haven't read them, and I can't tell you why.
Shame on you.
Yeah, it's kind of shameful, yeah.
Coming from me who has read even less.
How dare you?
I know.
Do you remember what your first interaction was with a comic book?
Yeah, actually, it was probably late 90s, early 2000s. I was in a bookshop with my parents, and there was a comic book section, and I just thought, I'm going to become a comic book collector, and I would have been like 10. So I saw on the shelf 2 comic books. I was like, I'm going to buy this. One was Power Rangers, and what I thought was a Captain America comic. It's actually Nomad.
So, Kate, you've already said that your first interactions with comic books were from the related property. So do you remember what your first interaction was with?
Yeah, there's 2 actually. The official first one has got to be the 70s Superman film, the Christopher Reeve one. I remember watching it loads as a kid. I don't know why. I assume my dad had it recorded off the telly or something. Could I tell you anything about that film? No. I just know that I had seen it. But the one for me that was more notable and memorable was the 1984 Supergirl film.
Right, yeah.
My sister and I were absolutely obsessed with it when we were little, so we saw that a lot. I just remember there's a scene in it where Kara goes from being the Kara version of herself into Supergirl, and she sort of does it by walking behind a tree, and it just stuck with me. And I was always like, oh god, I wish I could like change into my school clothes, because I'd have been like 8. It just stuck with me, so it's been with me for quite a long time without me even really realizing.
I think a lot of those older superhero films, the ones that were made before we were born, you sort of just grow up with them and they're on TV and you don't really remember the first time you saw them, but you know the ins and outs of them without thinking about it, but you've never actually sat down to watch them.
No, absolutely. And like I said, I don't know why we had it, but at the time I had no idea that it was a comic book film franchise or whatever. I just literally knew that it was a film that we liked watching and we watched a lot.
Well, Ian, I don't think I've actually asked you this question before. What would be your first interaction with comic books?
Probably when I was a kid, I did read the Beano and the Dandy. I actually used to have the Beano wallpaper in my room, I think because they are Scottish comics, so my mum always bought them for me. And then going into the 90s would have been watching the X-Men and Spider-Man cartoon. And then after that is when the X-Men films came out and Spider-Man and then the MCU.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've realised I have read comics quite a lot because I also used to read the Beano and the Dandy.
Yeah, I did as well. I mean, I think it's easy to forget that those things are comic books. Likewise, Calvin and Hobbes and little comic book shorts like that. They're still all comic books. They're just not one of the big two.
Yeah, I think people have this idea in their heads that comic books are these people with powers that fight crime, but a comic book about a bunch of school kids, that's still a cartoon and it's still a comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I think I read Dennis and Menace comics as well growing up. I think they might have been serialised in a children's magazine I might have picked up as a kid. So
Does the My Little Pony magazine count?
Did it have comic books in it, or was it a magazine?
I mean, it was a story.
Well, maybe then.
About
yeah.
the little
I'm sure there are comic books. In fact, I know there are comic books of My Little Pony nowadays, but I don't know what the magazine you would have read.
This was going back some time, so I probably don't remember either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my first interaction with comic books, would have been Beano, Dandy, things like that. And then the Simpsons comic book, which I used to collect from issue 1. And then I've actually dug out the first of the big two, the Marvel and the DC comic books. I dug out my copy of Spider-Man, the first one I ever owned, which was from 1997. And I don't own it anymore. There was a copy of Wolverine, which was also from 1997. So I can pretty accurately pinpoint when I got into Marvel comic books based on those two, because they're the first ones I have any recollection of owning. And then obviously from there it's just sort of spiraled.
Out of control.
Yes, very much.
Yes.
Until I'm doing a podcast on it.
Remember coming around your house when we were kids? I mean, you had a bunch of like comic book memorabilia on your wall and things. So even since I've known you, you've always been obsessed with like comic books and cartoonish stuff, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think 1997 I would have been 9, so that was probably when I started reading comics properly. And then prior to that, it was just casually. But yeah, say Simpsons comics. I remember I still had those until very recently, but I kept them in a shoebox that was slightly smaller than the comics themselves in the loft, so they were both water damaged and bent. So they went to the charity shop recently. But there was a good amount of them there.
They went to the charity shop. Why don't you just throw them out if they were damaged?
Well, someone might get some enjoyment out of them. A kid might read them, but they're no good for collectors. I'm not going to sell them on eBay or anything. They were still readable. Someone can get a deal out of it. You know, probably worth some money if I hadn't have stuck them in a shoebox. So what was the last comic book you read?
Well, up until recently, as in this conversation, I didn't think that I'd read any comic books before, a couple of months ago maybe. But interestingly, Iain actually, he was trying to get me to read some for quite a while. He was sort of saying to me, like, there's some that I found that I think that you'll really like and you should give them a go, and etc, etc. And it was never that I actively didn't want to read any. It was just because it's not my preferred hobby, I suppose, that I was like, well, yeah, I'll read some if you put some out. And there was just one day when we were a bit bored and he was like, do you want to read some comics? So I was like, do you know what, why not? So he picked me out a few and they ended up being the new 52 Harley Quinn issue 0. There was a one-shot Ms. Marvel and a one-shot Spider Island Heroes for Hire one. They were all right. The Harley Quinn one, I was really looking forward to the Harley Quinn one, but it was really focused on like the artists and their individual styles. And as much as it was nice to see the individual styles of their artwork, there wasn't really much of a storyline going on. It was just her reacting to their style of artwork. So as much as it was nice to see the artwork, I kind of got a bit bored and I was ready for it to finish. Miss Marvel took me a really long time to actually realise what was happening, and I'm still not 100% sure I know what happened. I did like the concept though, once I'd actually got past that like initial confusion. And then the Spider Island one had the best storyline, I think. That was actually quite gripping.
Because that was part of a larger storyline.
Yes.
That probably helped, rather than being a standalone where they have to tell the whole story in 20-odd pages.
It was interesting though, because I'm not really a fight scene person, and the majority of that book was a fight scene, yet still it captivated me. And I really, really liked the ending, which I am so fussy and picky about endings. So I did like it. I would have read more of that.
Cool. And what about you, Hayley?
The last comic book I read was Vision, which Iain got me for Christmas 2 years ago, and I only read it, well, last year now, and it was great and I loved it, and quite short actually. The book that I got had a lot of extra material in the back, so script and artwork, so I kind of wish that it was more, but the story that it told, yeah, I loved it.
So is that the one that he makes his own little family?
Yeah, yes, that's the one. I was so invested in it. And I don't know why it took me so long to actually read it, because when I got it as a present, I thought, amazing, I'm going to read this straight away. And then 1 year later, I did read it. And I think that's a problem of mine, is that I like to think I'm going to read a comic, I'm going to set some time aside, I'm going to read a comic or a book or anything that isn't scrolling through my phone on Reddit, essentially. And then it doesn't happen. And I think with podcasts like this, I think I'm going to read along, and I haven't.
Again, shame on you.
Thank you for that, yeah.
Yeah, but I have listened to it, so I think the time before that, the last comic book I read was The Wicked and the Divine, also great, and I really enjoyed it, so...
I bought you that one as well.
Yeah, I have bought my own before. Yeah, that was good, because we went into Forbidden Planet. Other comic book stores are available.
Thank you.
And yeah, the writer
Yeah.
was there signing his work.
Kieran Gillen is the writer, and he was promoting a James Bond comic book that he had written.
Yeah, so I didn't pick up the James Bond book. I picked up his other work.
I picked that one up. And his Dr. Aphra as well.
Ah, yes, of course, yeah. So yeah, I've got a couple of signed copies now, and they were great.
That was on your birthday as well, because he said, "Dear Hayley, happy birthday."
Oh yeah, I do remember.
Well, now you can't sell that because it says happy birthday and to Hayley unless you find someone called Hayley and it's their birthday. I'm going to ask this to Iain then, because I'll be honest, the last comics that I've read have been purely for the podcast. I know that you read a lot more than I do, so discounting the podcast comics, what were the last comic or last few comics that you've read?
The last couple I read was Black Hammer, Jeff Lemire, which is sort of a superhero comic but set in its own contained universe, about a group of heroes who are fighting some big creature and all get teleported off, disappear into this little micro universe, so very shades of WandaVision, which we'll speak about later. The other things I've read recently, American Born Chinese, which is a sort of semi-autobiographical piece from a Chinese-American writer and artist, which sort of tells 3 different stories, which all sort of interlink. And then I reread Laika, about the first, or one of the first, Russian space dogs. Yeah, all very good, I would say.
Interesting.
And then just, X-Men comics and things like that as well.
Yeah. So, Hayley, do you have any sort of favourite comic book runs or characters, whether through comics or films?
So, growing up, like you, I did watch a lot of comic book cartoons. So, I was heavily into Spider-Man.
Yep.
All things Spider-Man from the 90s cartoon. Also loved the X-Men cartoon. I was obsessed with Jubilee. So, actually, she was my favourite character.
Okay.
I can't give you an answer why. I think maybe because she is your surrogate character. Also, yeah, cool goggles.
Yeah, she might have been the one then that's brought you into the show.
Yeah, that probably was it. And yeah, cool goggles. I watched a Superman cartoon as well, and the Batman cartoon. Batman also one of my favourites. I think it was more the voice. Mark Hamill's Joker. He was also my favourite.
That's actually one that I've not particularly watched a lot of. I think I watched a couple of the Two-Face episodes when we did the Dark Knight, but that's not one that I watched as a kid. I think I was more into the Marvel ones, as we've said.
Okay. So what about you, Kate? Do you have any favourite characters or comic book runs?
Yeah, for me, I've always loved Poison Ivy. I couldn't tell you much about her, but I remember seeing her in one of the early Batman films. I think it's Batman Forever.
Batman and Robin.
But we don't talk about that film on this podcast.
Oh, okay, that's not a film. But this is something I made up in my mind, and it was played by Uma Thurman. But yeah, I just remember thinking that she was awesome, and I was really drawn to her hair and her outfit. She was the first woman in TV that I'd seen with like really cool red hair. And then obviously her outfit was just awesome anyway. I was just really drawn to her. She just seems like a really like strong, powerful, sexy woman. And yeah, that was up until recently. And then Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and then Baby Groot was a thing. And I just can't cope with Baby Groot.
Wait, so you're saying that Baby Groot is a powerful, sexy character?
Absolutely.
So leading on from that, do you have a favourite comic book movie or TV show?
Yeah, well, Guardians of the Galaxy is fantastic. Funnily enough, I had the option to go and see Guardians of the Galaxy when it came out, but I wasn't with this lovely gentle then. And for some reason, we didn't see it. We went and saw something else. And it was only when Iain and I got together that he was like, oh, you should really watch Guardians of the Galaxy. It's got a really cool soundtrack. I think you'd really like it. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. We'll watch it. And it just changed my world. So yeah, really love that.
Do you remember what you went to see instead?
No, but it was something crap, I'm sure. It wasn't worth missing Guardians of the Galaxy for, I know that.
Right.
Was it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by any chance?
No, I don't think it was. It could have been.
I think the reason Hayley asked that is because we were going to go and see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and when we got to the cinema, decided we couldn't be bothered and went to saw Guardians of the Galaxy for a second time.
I mean, yeah, I would rather watch it for a second time than go and watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm assuming you're talking about the Michael Bay one.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, so in terms of films, that's probably my favourite. And then I've actually got really into the Netflix shows like Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Punisher. Love all of them, especially Jessica Jones.
Yeah, because I was actually the one that introduced you to that, wasn't I? Because I think I said that I'm going to watch this show. It's sort of a crime drama, but it's comic booky. You can either watch it or not. And you went, yeah, I'll watch it.
I mean, you did say it to me, and I wasn't overly excited when you said, oh, it's like a private investigator and a comic book thing. But then you showed me the trailer, and I was like, I'm invested. I'm watching this with you. And then I think you tried to watch it without me, and I was like, what are you doing? This is your chance to get me watching comic book stuff with you.
Although, to be fair, that was the first one out of that lot. I'd already seen Daredevil at this point, but we went back and we watched season 1 again.
We did, because you're a gem.
So out of those shows, is Jessica Jones your favourite?
I think Jessica Jones probably does take the top spot just because I love her as a character. I do like the storylines a lot.
Would you say that she's powerful and sexy?
She epitomizes powerful and sexy, and her outfit and hair is just on fleek. No, she's awesome. But no, I love her. But I think Iain will vouch for me. When we watched Daredevil, there's that one-shot fight scene in the hallway, and I was just absolutely dumbfounded by that. But yeah, probably Jessica Jones just does take the lead.
Okay. And Hayley, what about yourself?
I've watched all of the MCU films coming out in the cinema. Some of them not so good, but I think at the moment my favourite MCU film is probably Thor Ragnarok. Just because it's so fun, and I feel like I could probably watch it on repeat and just have a blast with it. So I'm very excited to see what happens in Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
What about TV show?
Oh, TV show. I mean, we watched all the Netflix shows, and for me, I feel like it started off really strongly, and I don't know why, I just lost a bit of interest in it. I just felt like it wasn't as good as it could have been. But seeing as Disney Plus exists now, I'm really excited for all the shows coming out this year and in the future. Absolutely love WandaVision.
Which we'll get onto later.
Yeah, very excited to continue watching that.
I'd just like to point out that both the girls there obviously just said about the Marvel shows on Netflix. I still do find it weird that they obviously brought out Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and then Luke Cage, and went straight on to The Defenders. And there was only 3 of them. It's odd how they didn't do an Iron Fist show.
What's Iron Fist?
Nobody knows.
They didn't make a TV show, did they?
No. It might have been announced, but then might have been cancelled.
I'm still waiting on it, but, they'll get to it eventually.
I'm sure it'll be really good when it comes out as well.
Can't see how it would be possible to mess that up.
I'm really hoping that they cast someone that was in Game of Thrones that can't fight that well, but we'll see.
Moving on. Iain, what's your favourite film and TV show?
I like a lot of things. You know that I like crap things.
Yeah.
I've tried to actually stay away from I like it because it's crap. So a couple of them have already come up. Guardians 1 and Thor Ragnarok. I think my overall favourite MCU film is The Avengers. It's a film that I can watch if I'm like tired or drunk or hungover or can't sleep or ill. It's just a film that I've seen so many times that if I fall asleep halfway through and then wake up, I know what's happened, so I don't have to go back. But coming away from the MCU, probably the Flash TV show and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, we watched it again recently and it's kind of mind-blowing actually. I think that might be one of my favourite comic book films as well.
I think it's really good that they've come away from Peter Parker and actually brought out a film that is focused, not solely, but mainly on Miles.
Yeah, definitely.
And it looks beautiful.
It does, yeah, it does. Have you got any favourite films or shows that haven't come up in conversation so far?
Well, no, actually, I mean, Into the Spider-Verse was going to be one of mine, but the other one that I can watch all the time, over and over again, is Dredd, the reboot of Dredd with Carl Urban.
Yeah.
It's just one of those films I can watch all the time. But yeah, that's probably one of my favourite comic book movies.
That's actually just come onto Netflix, so that's been put on my list so I can watch it. I mean, I have seen it before, but I've not seen it in years.
It's just a perfect little self-contained action film. You know, it doesn't have any ties to a greater universe. It's just does what it does really well, tells a story, and has some great action scenes. And the other one, TV shows, I mean, there's obviously loads on Netflix and Amazon. There's The Boys, there's Umbrella Academy, there's Watchmen on HBO. But I'd say probably actually Legion, 3 seasons of Legion we got were probably some of the best self-contained TV show about a comic book character that we've got. Even though it was quite loosely linked to the comic books, it still took that as a basis and ran from there and did its own thing with it. So yeah, probably that.
Yeah. As I said previously, I haven't finished that. I think I got halfway through season 2 and stopped. Watchmen, kind of the same. I got a few episodes in, never really went back to finish it. But yeah, I mean, I think Kate got excited there when you said about Umbrella Academy.
I did. I can't believe I forgot about it. I thoroughly enjoyed all of it.
Yeah, well, Iain was saying all those properties. You should have seen my face. It was like, oh yeah, of course. All those things are fantastic. I mean, Dredd is a film where we have watched so many times, and each time we just have so much fun. It's great. Just love a bit of ultra-violence, you know?
I don't think I've seen Dredd.
It's really good.
Should we watch it today?
Yeah.
Cool. That's a snapshot of our relationship right there. I don't think I've seen that. We should. Should we do that today? Yeah.
Well, you've got not much else to do at the moment. Can't exactly go out.
Yeah, other than talking to each other, and who wants to do that?
That's why we're recording it.
Proof that we do talk to each other.
That's the longest conversation we've had in years. Right, so this being our Valentine's Day special, let's finish it on a question about love. Who are your favourite and least favourite comic book couples? Let's go with Kate first, just to put you on the spot as you've not read many comics.
That's okay. I don't think I have a favourite couple. Probably a little bit based on the fact I don't know all that many or the backstories or kind of what happened to them. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. I'm sounding very much like I just love Jessica Jones. I got a Jones for Jessica Jones. But yeah, I do like them. I liked their, again, from the TV series, I think it was played really well, and I liked their thing they had going on. I do have a least favourite, though.
Oh, well, should we do everyone's favourite first, and then we'll come back to least favourite?
Yes.
Just on the topic there of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, in the comic, they have a kid together. So it's not page-to-screen adaptation.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
But if you are interested in reading more about that relationship, you could start with Alias, Jessica Jones's own comic book by Brian Michael Bendis, and that introduced her to Luke Cage, and it starts that relationship.
Do you know what? Having seen the TV series, I would probably be quite interested in picking up those comics and reading them.
Are you talking about Jessica Jones TV series?
Yeah.
Okay, because there is a TV show called Alias. Doesn't have anything to do with comics.
Oh yeah, no, I know that.
Okay.
I think you were the only one that was confused there. So Hayley, who's your favourite comic book couple?
So it's probably not going to be a surprise, as I've already mentioned it a few times. Wanda and Vision, I believe in their love so much. I'm so invested in their love.
Oh my God. So I so nearly put them down as a favourite couple, but because of the fact we're talking about them today, I didn't want to say it because I thought it looks like, oh, we're watching WandaVision at the moment, so my favourite are Wanda and Vision. But I'm glad you said it. Carry on.
How topical.
Well, it's just because their relationship has blossomed. It hasn't just been like quite a few comic book adaptations. There's just a love interest and they're just there. And I don't believe in it. But because it's been ongoing since Civil War, with Vision cooking paprikash. And I thought, oh, that's a seed of love right there. That's going to blossom. And he just seemed really protective of her. And even though she is a boss-ass bitch and does not need protection, yeah, I just love how it's kind of developed.
So Iain, what about yourself?
I was trying to think about this the other day, and I think that because there has been so many over the years in so many different comics and different groups, but I think I'm a fan of the classics. So like Clark Kent and Lois Lane, pretty much all the way from the Superman films from the 70s, Lois and Clark, the 90s show, and then into Smallville. That's a staple comic book couple. Also, Peter Parker and Mary Jane, again from the cartoons and going into Sam Raimi's films as well.
So not Gwen Stacy?
No, I think I prefer him with MJ rather than with Gwen.
Just wondering, because you said you like the classics, and obviously Gwen predates MJ.
Well, yeah, but I think...
Not that classic.
Yeah, not that far back. No, I think because Spider-Man, the cartoon, was one of the first things that I watched, seeing them together on that show, to me, that's the couple that should be. Bit of an unpopular opinion, probably, but I'm not a fan of the MJ in the MCU, personally.
Okay. I think she's fine. I don't think she resembles MJ from the comics at all.
That's kind of why I don't...
For the story they're telling, she works absolutely fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it works in the story, but that's probably why I don't particularly like her, because it's not a page-to-comic.
You would prefer if it was more authentic to the comic book, or more accurate to it.
Yeah, and it's that sort of her being the redhead that he falls in love with and saying tiger all the time, her famous catchphrase.
That's what you wanted. He's just her.
Good, easy tiger.
Just her walking around, just saying tiger. I want him to go out with Tony the Tiger.
He's great.
What about you?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest disappointments with never seeing an Iron Fist TV show is that we never got to see Iron Fist and Misty Knight on the big or little screen. I think it was strange how they paired Misty Knight with Luke Cage in the TV shows rather than Danny Rand.
Yeah.
They have this really nice relationship in the comic books where they are from two completely different worlds. She's a streetwise, Harlem-born cop, and he's this sort of billionaire who was raised in a martial arts city in the middle of nowhere. So they've got this really nice odd couple dynamic that I think works well for their relationship in the comic books. Also, he's just my favourite character, so it's nice.
Yeah, because you're a big fan of the Heroes for Hire comics, aren't you?
I'm a fan of those. I'm more of a fan of the Power Man and Iron Fist comic books. And then the other one, actually, I wrote down as we've been speaking, because Kate actually reminded me of it earlier, would be Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Yeah, actually.
That as a relationship, I think, is one I really enjoy, and it's one I enjoyed from Harley Quinn, the TV show as well, the cartoon.
I've not yet watched that, but she's voiced by Kaylee Cuoco. I don't know how you say her last name, but she's voiced by her.
Yeah. So, least favourites. Hayley, let's start with you.
I have many opinions on this. Okay, so
I think you and I are probably going to have the same answer for this.
I think so. So, as I was saying about organic relationships, so for example, Wanda and Vision, and also I think Tony Stark and Pepper Potts is a good example of that.
Yeah.
It's more of a slow burn. So they're the types of relationships I like to see on screen. Relationships I don't like are, for example, Thor and Jane Foster. I'm talking about the film. I'm not very familiar with the comic book, so I don't have an opinion on that. But to me, it just seemed very forced. I mean, I get it. They're both attractive people and they both looked at each other and went, I like that. That's fine. But I just thought, no, I don't like this.
It's almost like this sort of hunky guy fell from the sky and this girl went, oh, he's fit. And that was how they became a couple.
I mean, that is the dream.
That is literally the plot. That is exactly what happens, though. Are you familiar with the phrase himbo?
No.
No.
Okay, so...
It's just a male bimbo.
Exactly.
Oh.
So...
I love it. I know a few of those.
It also means he's lovable but stupid, okay? So it's almost like Jane Foster sees this lovable but stupid man with abs and is like, okay, I now need to teach him how to drink in public.
So what's your point?
Yeah, because she is like an astrophysicist and he's like throwing cups on the floor and things. From an intellectual standpoint, they didn't have much in common.
I just don't think they gel at all, and I just did not find the relationship believable. It's the same in the second Thor film, which is even worse. I'll get very passionate about this. But I do want to know what happens in Love and Thunder as she's back.
Yeah.
I think it might be treated differently, and I am excited to see that.
I trust Taika Waititi a lot more with that property than I do the previous directors, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know that Kenneth Branagh did the first one. I don't even know who did the second one.
It was, I can't remember his name, but he directed some Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a clue.
Okay.
Another relationship I am displeased with is Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff. I don't get that relationship either. That just seemed, again, very forced. And I don't know if I'm just missing something. It just didn't go anywhere. Another relationship.
You got a few there.
I did say that I was very, very passionate about this. So the Joker and Harley Quinn.
Yeah, right. That's my one.
Yeah, absolutely that.
That's also my one.
Oh, okay.
I was going to put that down, but I didn't because I personally thought that would have been one of Kate's favourites because of Harley Quinn. But sorry, what were the reasons that you didn't like them, Hayley?
Oh, there are many. The relationship is abusive.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It is not a good relationship. And that is why Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy is a good match. It's a very caring relationship. It's completely different than the Joker and Harley Quinn.
Yeah. I mean, what annoys me about that relationship the most is the fact that there is a certain part of the community who do idolise that as a relationship, and they talk about them and their boyfriend being like Joker and Harley Quinn, and you just want to say to them, that's not a good thing.
That's awful.
That's an abusive relationship.
Run. Let's get out.
Do you need
I
help?
was gonna go down the route of saying that obviously there's certain people that have like kinks and things, and I think if it's a kink, fine, but if you're actually looking for a relationship like that, then you probably do need some help. And not to be sort of rude with people either, but it's easy enough to accidentally get yourself into those relationships, or those relationships happen to you, but you definitely should not be idolizing being either the person doing it or the receiver of that abusive behavior.
Yeah, and I think that's probably my problem, is sometimes the glamorization of that as an ideal is the problem, is that this is a relationship that is not meant to be liked, it's not meant to be idolized. But yeah, some people get the wrong impression of it because of art from the comic books and things like that make it seem like this sort of star-crossed romance, which it's really not.
Yeah, it shouldn't have gone on for so long. When you said about Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, I like how that one came afterwards, so she was able to rebuild herself almost and find someone that actually works well.
Yeah. So all of us have got the same answer pretty much. What would your answer be then?
I thought long and hard about this because, I mean, yeah, Joker and Harley Quinn up there, but also Bruce Wayne and Barbara Gordon. This is purely based on Batman, the Killing Joke film.
Yeah.
So the cartoon from 2016. The first half an hour of that film is just those two, they get down and all of this sort of stuff, which I just found odd.
It's very odd, the putting of those two characters together where he should be more of a protege and also very good friends with her father is very strange.
Yeah.
So on the subject of couples, I think now would probably be a good time to move on to WandaVision. What do you say?
Yeah. Woo!
So just a quick spoiler warning, we are going to be talking about the first 4 episodes of WandaVision, which is what's come out to date. So if you haven't seen them yet and you don't want spoilers, go to the chapter markers. You can skip ahead on this part till after we have done talking about it. But for now, just be warned, there will be spoilers. So, WandaVision, what is everyone's first impression?
I know very little about Wanda and Vision, other than what I've seen in Age of Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War. So I was pretty open-minded when it came to it. I wasn't really sure of the 1950s style for the first episode, but I did find myself warming to it quite quickly. First and second episodes, I think I found a bit slow, but I think that's possibly because I was just generally a little bit confused as to what was happening and why. But generally, I do like the kind of easy watching sitcom style that they've gone for. And I absolutely love Catherine Hahn's Agnes character. Right from the offset, I was just like, I love her.
Quick little fun fact. She actually voices Doc Ock in Into the Spider-Verse.
She does.
Easter egg.
I get what you're saying there. It's a comment that I've seen online quite a lot about the pace of things. And I think coming at it from your perspective, perhaps, which, you know, is less invested with these characters and with the universe, I can see how those first 2 episodes might be a little bit jarring. But Hayley, you're quite invested in these characters. What were your thoughts of it?
I think I've already insinuated it, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I don't think that came up.
I will keep on saying it. No, I'm really enjoying it. I knew a little bit what to expect, having read Vision, which this is not based on, but there are shades of it. Creating an idyllic household, 2 kids, housewife, doing the dishes, having a lovely time, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that sort of style is present in WandaVision. I've also read little bits and pieces of House of M, so I've got some knowledge of that, which I don't know if that helps. But yeah, I love it aesthetically. I think it's quite sinister. So when you say easygoing, I think, oh, it's so sinister what's happening. It's like, you know, like those nuclear towns which they create to blow up. I kind of get that vibe from it.
Knowing what I know now, having seen all of the episodes so far, I totally get that. When I was going straight into the first and second episodes, obviously I didn't have any idea of the overhead sort of plot that was happening. And when I say easy watching sitcoms, I mean, like, you know, you have your Friends, you have what's the other ones?
How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother, Everybody Loves Raymond. That's just like the more recent one.
Full House.
Yeah. But I was really getting, especially in the second episode, I was getting like Bewitched vibes.
Yeah.
You know, the show Bewitched from back in the day.
Definitely.
Even like the theme song at the beginning, I was just like, wow, this screams. Da-da, da-da.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deliberate homage is the first episode was the Dick Van Dyke Show, the second episode was Bewitched.
Oh, was it?
Third episode, I think, might have been the Brady Bunch.
Yes, well, 70s.
The 70s.
Yes,
So they've
yeah.
taken a different era. Yeah, I mean, even things like Vision tripping over the footstool in the first episode
Yeah.
is taken directly from the opening credits of the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, okay.
So each episode is based quite deliberately on just sitcoms from that era, but also a specific one. And yeah, Bewitched definitely was the second episode's.
Ah, I didn't know that. But all the way through that, I was just like, yeah, that's Bewitched. I do actually really like the fact that they've done a different era every episode as well, because I think if it had always stayed in the 50s era like the first one, I might have maybe got a little bit bored with it. But yeah, I definitely like it. It kind of made it a bit different, and I really love the fact that not only, I mean, obviously the style changed, but they changed the fashion, they changed the house decor, they even changed their acting style.
Yeah, and even things like the ratio of the camera changes and the style in which they're shot. So old sitcoms used to be filmed in these multi-camera shots. So basically you would have 2 or 3 cameras set up around the set and they would film it from all different angles and then cut between them. Obviously later on we got into single camera shots, the same way you make a film is you film one person, then you reset, you film the other person reacting. And so, yeah, in that first episode, the whole thing was shot like a traditional 1950s sitcom. Apart from when Mr. Hart starts choking and things start to break down, and then it's shot much more traditionally like a film. And I think these are things that even if you don't pick up on, things that you're not necessarily aware of, they create this sense. It's subtextual. It's, you know, it gives you that sense of unease, even if you're not aware of the reasons why. I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that the first episode was shot in front of a live studio audience?
Yeah, actually, I think it was. Maybe not the whole thing, but they did have 3 or 4 rows of people that would watch them film it. And yeah, it actually was called filmed before a live studio audience.
Oh, cool. That's really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the sitcom genres going ahead, because obviously we are due an 80s, a 90s and a 2000s.
Yeah.
I think there is going to be a deliberate, as Hayley said, Full House reference, which obviously starred the Olsen twins, Elizabeth Olsen's older sisters. Quite a meta reference there. And obviously I'm then things like Modern Family and The Office in the 2000s. And I think that would, again, change the style of the sitcom.
I can't wait to see Paul Bettany just staring straight into the camera, just knowing smile.
Well, talking about The Office, I've actually just started to watch the American version. I've never actually seen the UK version or the American version, but I've literally binged the first 3 seasons. I think when it does get to that point, because I've now started to watch it, I'll appreciate that kind of style more.
What about when it breaks from that sitcom side? What about when we see those glimpses? At the end of the first episode, it's Mr. Hart choking. At the end of the second episode, it's the beekeeper. Kate, what do you make of that?
Well, that's actually what I was going to say a second ago. When you said about the fact that the way it's been shot, it gives you the feeling of uneasiness, even though you might not necessarily know why. I got super excited because I did feel that. I was watching it thinking, I don't know what it is that just feels weird. And I didn't know why. I didn't get that reference, to be fair. Iain did say about changing the aspect of the frame as well, and I didn't even notice it. But when we actually went back to go and look at it again, I started to notice it. I also don't know what happened with the beekeeper. I know he came up through the sewer bit, but other than that, I don't really know.
Well, I don't think anyone knows what's happened to him yet, but obviously we learn a bit more about that world in episode 4. We get a glimpse of it at the end of episode 3, don't we? Which is where you really notice that change in ratio, because actually they change it in frame.
Yeah.
You zoom out and the frame ratio changes on screen as it goes from Wanda's world into the real world, as it were.
Yeah, it does do the same thing in the first one when you've got the Marvel logo, which I do like that they've now actually added shots from Infinity War. But yeah, as it sort of zooms out a bit, you do see the screen changing from the 16:9 goes to the 4:3. So it works both ways. And also, straight off the bat, I've got this logo that we all know, and then it changes. But yeah, regarding my thoughts on the first 2 episodes, I mean, if this wasn't a Marvel property, I probably wouldn't watch it. I wasn't as intrigued by the first 2 episodes as I thought I would be. And I think when it gets to episode 3 and 4, episode 3 is the episode that I thought that I wanted. Episode 4 is the episode that I needed, if that makes sense.
No.
So the end of episode 3, bit where Monica comes out. So there you go. You got some answers, or at least sort of they're showing an outside world. And then episode 4, I mean, it's not fully explained, but you get more of a background to what's happening.
Yeah, no, there definitely is a bit more explanation, and it sort of runs concurrent to the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I think it's something that, as I say, some of the critiques of the show that I've seen online have been about the pace and about the confusion about what is going on. So I think actually it's a really well-timed episode to just refresh people's memory and explain a few of those things and keep people interested. Personally, I think the sitcom setup, I really liked it. I think if it was that every single week, it may grow a little bit old.
Yeah.
You think actually there's only really an hour before we got to those explanations. If this was a film, you wouldn't think twice about it. If there was an hour long of setting up and then they went, right, well now here's some explanations. You know, you don't expect the answers to all of M. Night Shyamalan's films in the first hour long of it. Do you? The answers, you know, they have to be earned. There has to be a mystery setting up to it, and then, right, here's the answers. So no, I think the structure they've gone for works really well so far, and I'm really intrigued to see what's ahead.
Yeah.
Those little breaks in Wanda's reality gave me chills in a way. I just thought it was so just freaky. I think it's in the 3rd episode when Vision, he's just saying, this is wrong. Something is not right here. And just Wanda's face of, this is kind of coming apart at the seams a little bit. I need to edit this, quite literally. I just loved that. I just thought it was so sinister.
Yeah, it does have that sort of scene where there's a little glitch and it goes back to before he said that.
Yeah. And then when we saw that in the 4th episode, from the outside world's perspective, you don't get those little bits. You just saw it cut straight from Wanda asking the question to Vision giving the answer.
Yeah.
You didn't see that bit in the between. So she's editing those out in reality as well.
Yeah. Something that I did actually realise is the fact that when it happens to him, she just goes back. But when it happens to someone else, such as Monica, she actually hurts them. Like when it happens with Mr. Hart, he's questioning and he's demanding answers. And I think that she caused him to choke.
I would say she definitely caused Mr. Hart to choke. So I think the item that Vision pulls out of his esophagus at the end is the chocolate-covered strawberry.
Oh, is it?
A single chocolate-covered strawberry on the plate, which obviously is not something that they were eating.
I had no idea that that's why he started choking. I just thought it was a coincidence.
Yeah, actually, in that scene, I did find it a bit creepy that obviously he's choking, and then rather than Wanda saying, "Can you help him, Vision?" she just sort of turns to him, or almost turns to the camera, in fact, and says, "Vision, help him." And it's more of like a command.
Yeah.
It's more of an order. So in a kind of way that she is controlling him.
Yeah, because obviously he doesn't react at all to the choking. He doesn't even look at Mr. Hart as he's choking. He just sits there staring dead ahead.
Yeah.
So he goes completely inert when Wanda starts to lose control. The world around her, which includes Vision that she's created, starts to fall apart as well. It starts to lose its sense of reality.
That might explain as well then, because one thing that I noticed was that during the choking scene, Mrs. Hart is just sitting there saying, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." And to me, that didn't seem like a natural reaction if you see the love of your life potentially choking. Like, surely you'd be a little bit more hysterical. But she just keeps repeating this, "Stop
Yeah,
it."
I think there was nothing sort of natural about that scene. It's all about the construct falling apart.
Right.
I felt a little bit emotional about the whole situation. Just that bit again where Vision is kind of questioning his own reality. This is not the idyllic paradise that has been constructed, I suppose, for both of them to live, seeing as they couldn't do it in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought, oh, this is really sad.
Well, especially, I think, knowing what we know about Vision, the fact that he is dead, which I think is what makes that shot in the 4th episode all the more poignant, where he enters the room and it has the grey Vision with the Mind Stone caved out of his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of almost zombie Vision.
So sad.
Well, yeah, it's literally Darcy. Yeah, it actually does say he's dead. He's not blipped, he's dead. He hasn't come back because of what the Hulk did.
Yeah, I mean, he writes it on the board, doesn't he? Agent Wu writes it on the board. Is Vision alive? I think the answer that I'm leaning towards from this point is probably not, is that he is also a construct of this reality.
Yeah.
Which is why, obviously, she ejected Monica, because Monica was not meant to be a part of this world that's been created. You know, Monica was an interloper. She came in there, and that's why she was forcefully thrown out.
Well, yeah, talking about worlds that have been created, there's actually a bit in episode 3 where Herb is sawing the plants and then he ends up sawing the wall. It actually did remind me of an episode of Rick and Morty when they're put into an artificial world. They all start to glitch. So there's a postman there that says, "My man." He says it over and over again. But that whole episode is just about a fake world. So I do like that they're putting in these little points so that you can go, well, yeah, if it is a fake world they've created, when it all starts to fall apart, these characters or these AIs will start to behave in an odd way.
That was one of my questions, because I did not understand why Herb was just cutting into the wall, but that makes more sense.
Yeah, I think that's people glitching out, because obviously this whole reality is constructed. So this idea that people, the actual residents of this town, are starting to glitch. And I think in the 4th episode, again, all of those residents of the town were identified, with exception of one. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I did.
No, I didn't. Of course I didn't.
Yeah, obviously Agnes. Everyone else in town has been identified as a person from Westview that she has taken over, apart from Agnes.
I did notice that. As soon as you said it, I was like, I did notice that, because I love Agnes and I really wanted to know who she was in the real world.
So that's my biggest mystery now, I think, is who she's going to turn out to be, if anyone.
Weirdly enough, though, there are actually quite a few little nods in the episodes to show that things aren't quite as they seem. In the opening credits of episode 1, you see Wanda and Vision on their wedding day driving to Westview, and you see them approach Westview, and then the next thing you see, they're actually inside the town. You never see them sort of cross that border, which I didn't know whether they'd done that on purpose, because we know now from episode 4 that there's this kind of energy field. Perhaps they didn't want to show us that that's there. There's also in episode 2, when Wanda's at the planning meeting for the talent show, she and Geraldine, Monica, are sitting together, and Monica turns to Wanda and says, "I don't actually know what I'm doing here," which is interesting because of the fact that you see in episode 4 that she's been sucked into the world. And then episode 3, after the babies are born and Vision showing the doctor out, the doctor says he's not going to go on holiday anymore because it's a small town and there's no getting out. Yeah, those are the bits that I was like, oh my God, it literally is screaming at you that this is not a real thing.
Yeah, it's a creeping sense of dread. And I think that's why you need those first 2 episodes, which are more straightforward sitcom, to sort of build up towards that sort of uneasiness. Rather than just throwing you straight in and explaining that things aren't right, it builds to it.
Slowly showing the cracks happening.
What I loved about episode 4 was the reintroduction of 2 characters that we haven't seen in a while, Darcy and Jimmy Woo. I just like to see them again. It's been a while, especially for Darcy. I mean, she just disappeared. That was Thor 2, I think. That was years ago. So, you're still here. That's great. And I liked the little trick that Agent Woo did, that he got taught by Scott Lang. So, just thought that was lovely.
Yeah. But you think he's been practicing that for 5 years?
Yeah. That's cute.
Finding the card trick. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, I like the assembling of a bunch of random, or seemingly random, characters from all these different Marvel films, and then just putting them into this show. And I had my doubts beforehand, but actually it works really well. You know, they're all sort of government officials or scientists. It makes sense that they would be investigating the thing. It makes it seem part of the wider world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it also shows that the team-ups don't have to be the heroes.
Exactly. It doesn't always have to be Robert Downey Jr. coming across to Spider-Man. It can be some of the supporting cast. It makes it seem like more of a cohesive world.
Yeah. Well, we've sort of spoken about our initial thoughts and obviously questions and comments about the show. But, I mean, this is probably more aimed at Kaite and Hayley. But where do you think it will go from here?
I think that unfortunately it's going to unravel for Wanda, either very slowly, like you're saying about the glitching people, so this becomes more frequent, more obvious. Maybe the residents start to wake up a little bit slowly and start to act out a little bit, so maybe then Wanda has to stamp that out, which is quite villainous. So I don't think she's a villain. I just think she's very distraught about the events of the last couple of films.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's going to slowly unravel for her. I think that Darcy and Agent Wu are going to unravel the mystery. It's going to follow them mainly. And I think eventually she's going to be pulled out of it kind of forcibly. I don't know how yet, but I just think it's going to be very upsetting and tragic, and I will cry.
So your theory there that she'll get pulled out eventually, do you think that she'll also be able to take Vision out at the same time? Do you reckon that's possible, or would you like to see that?
I would love to see it, but I think he is firmly dead. However, hasn't his brainwave been saved by Shuri?
Yeah.
So part of him, or an essence of him, does exist somewhere.
Although we haven't seen someone leave Westview, which, by the way, Westview, WV.
Yeah.
Although we haven't seen someone leave Westview, we have seen Monica ejected, in which she was still wearing her 70s clothes, and we saw the rope attached to the beekeeper come back out as something completely different. It was pulled straight out.
We think it was a
skipping rope.
Yeah. So we do know that things that Wanda has changed, has altered, can leave Westview and will remain intact. So there is a chance.
Yeah, okay.
I hope so. I just want them to be happy.
So Kate, same question for you. Where do you think it would go from here? What are your thoughts?
Well, Iain can vouch for me that after episode 2, I said that I thought she was in some form of coma, either imagining their unfulfilled life together or like a weird flashback, or that she was living in her own little world, creating the life that they couldn't and wouldn't have after Vision's death. Turns out, it pretty much tells you that that's what's happening. Prior to that, I thought it was just going to be that she lived this life and it went through the decades. So we've seen the 50s, we've seen the 60s, seen the 70s. I thought it would just go 80s, 90s, etc., etc. And then she'd kind of come to as such from said coma when it got to the present day. But now we know that the present day is at the same time. So I don't really know. It's kind of thrown me a bit for 6. But I really liked what Hayley was saying just then, that actually it's going to fall down around her. And I'm kind of excited to see it because I think looking at her character, if she's witnessed this awful situation with seeing the love of her life murdered in front of her, when she's finally taken out of that little perfect bubble she's made, I think she'll just go colossal. So it'd be exciting to see that, whatever happens.
So you both seem to be firmly of the opinion that Wanda is the sole cause of this. So you don't believe there's anyone causing this, maybe Agnes, for instance, or another villain?
Well, Agnes can do no wrong, so it's not her fault. No, I've always had this feeling that it was like a coping mechanism for Wanda. But again, I don't really know enough about Wanda and Vision as a couple or Wanda herself to be able to really put a knowledgeable background into it. I'm going all on how I felt about what I do know and what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard things, I've read things on the internet where people are saying it's AIM, for example.
Which we now know it's not. The
No.
only real reason for that was the
Beekeepers,
outfit.
yeah. But I don't really want to read much about it because I just want to see it unfold. And I'm very excited to see that. What I'm scared of, it's going to get to the last episode and I don't know if there's going to be another season of this. I think it might just be a self-contained series. It's going to be a case of everything is falling around her and it's going to be basically just Wanda and Vision left. And I'm just imagining it being really glitchy, like into the Spider-Verse. And basically Vision just saying to her that you need to let go. And if that sort of thing happens, I'm just going to go cry.
Just if that happens, Hayley, call me. I'll bring ice cream and wine.
It's
and we'll
just
just
tragic.
cry together for
We'll
however
just
long it
cry.
takes. That would be heartbreaking, though.
Right. So, does anyone else have any other points to make on WandaVision?
Yeah, so we've not really commented on the commercials, but I did like that they included these as a little commercial break, as they obviously have in TV shows. Obviously with little sort of references to other things, like there was the Stark toaster, which obviously Tony Stark and his dad.
Yep.
The watch, which was by Strucker,
Yep.
which obviously had the word Hydra and the little Hydra logo on the face.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Hydra soak bath powder as well in the third one. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think of these little random sort of commercials, really, is the question?
The toaster is a bit more than just the Stark inference. It's the sound it makes, the repeated beeping, was the sound of the bomb that killed Wanda and Pietro's parents.
You said that, didn't you?
It says about them being stuck in the rubble and talking about how they had to stay there with their parents' bodies and this undetonated Stark bomb.
Yeah.
That's the youngest we know of Wanda, any memory of hers. So I feel like these trailers are piecing together her life in order from what we know so far. So we've got Tony Stark's bomb.
Yep.
We then go to Strucker's experiments on them with Hydra, etc., etc. So I think we might then see the next one could be going on to her time with the Avengers, the incident with Crossbones that killed the people in that building, which therefore caused the Sokovia Accords. So yeah, I'd be interested to see where the future trailers are, but I think that's what they're doing, is they are flashbacks to her previous life.
Yeah, you commented there about the toaster that makes the beeping noise. Just before it does that, when it powers up, you do hear the little noise that sounds a lot like the Iron Man suit powering up. It's like the little sort of noise.
The arc reactor. That's a nice little Easter egg, which I think is probably a good time to lead us on to Iain's very first Valentine's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt. Iain's egg hunt.
I'm not yoking you. Hello and welcome to my favourite part of the show, my egg hunt. Before the big reveal in episode 4, actually a load of sword logos sprinkled throughout the episodes. In episode 1, it's right at the end on the screen and it's on the notebook. We later find out that that's Darcy. In episode 2, it's on the side of the toy helicopter and also on the back of the beekeeper.
Yep.
And in episode 3, it's on Geraldine's necklace and on the car door at the end. And what I thought, because it's a TV show, I'd go episode by episode and list a few of the Easter eggs that I saw. So, in episode 1, on the side of the bottle of wine, it actually says Maison de Mépris, which translates as House of Contempt. This probably is a reference to House of M, the 2005 X-Men comic, where Wanda says her famous line, "No more mutants." Also, in that same episode, the date that's marked on the calendar is August 23rd. This could be a nod to the 23 Marvel films that came before WandaVision. Then in episode 2, it says number 57 on the side of the toy helicopter, which Vision's first appearance was in Avengers issue 57. And then going into episode 3 then, actually one that you sent me across, the brand on the paint can is Simza, which is a nod to Jeremy Simza, who is the storyboard artist on WandaVision. He will also work on Doctor Strange 2 and She-Hulk, along with his previous work on The Boys and Deadpool 2. He also has some uncredited work on The Legends of Tomorrow, Flash, and Supergirl.
Don't blame him for wanting to be uncredited.
And then in episode 4, on the side of Monica's sword car, it says 8512, which could be a reference to Vision and Scarlet Witch Volume 2, which is a 12-issue run from 1985. And in the same comic, Wanda creates 2 children and she names them Billy and Tommy.
Yeah, mainstay characters from the comics since then as well.
Yeah, actually, not too sure why I'm saying yeah, because I didn't know that. Anyway.
They're part of the Young Avengers, which we talked about during our news roundup for the beginning of the new year.
And finally, probably my favourite Easter egg of them all, which Hayley actually brought up earlier on in the show, but I think it's worth a re-mention. When Jimmy Woo meets Monica for the first time, he used a magic trick to show her his business card. This is actually the same trick that he learned from Scott Lang in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I've got a question for you then. During our Christmas episode, we established that Christmas eggs are made of stuffing, Easter eggs are made of chocolate. What exactly is a Valentine's egg made out of? And tell me you can't buy it on the Goop store.
I would say that Valentine's Day eggs are made of love.
Aww.
Okay, moving on then. We were struggling to come up with questions for this episode, so we decided to let our listeners do some of the work. Now, usually we have a regular feature called Ask the Teapot, so we thought we'd take 2 or 3 of our favourite questions from that and pose them to our guests. So, welcome to Ask the Teapot Reheated. So, first question. In our V for Vendetta episode, Josh from Southampton asked, what is your favourite comic book casting of all time? Let's go to Kate first.
Very good question, Josh. It's a tough one, really. There haven't been any castings that I've seen that I've thought, ugh. But I have to say that I really loved Heath Ledger's Joker. I think that's quite a popular one anyway, but I really feel like he brought so much to that character and his portrayal of it was just fantastic. And I really love Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I think he's just got that nice, humorous way about him. Not really much more I can say to that.
Canadians.
Blame Canada.
Yeah. And Hayley?
This is an easy one for me. I think I'm going to have to say Robbie Downey Jr., which I believe was Ian's answer to this question. He's just synonymous with the character now, and I can't imagine anyone ever playing him other than him. So for now, it might change in the future when they do a reboot, obviously. But I do have another one, which I haven't actually seen yet, but I just think it works. Because I have a lot of trust in casting directors, and I like to hope for the best. But I am excited to see Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon in the Batman film that's coming. Also excited to see Robert Pattinson be Batman.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. The casting is great.
Isn't it funny, though, that his main sort of repertoires that people are going to know him for are a shiny vampire, essentially a bat, and then another bat?
Have you seen The Lighthouse?
No.
Okay, wow. That is a trip. Do watch that.
Okay.
Also, just watch anything that Robert Pattinson's made within the last 5 years. Basically, since he stopped doing Twilight, he's just been on top form in weird indie art house films.
That will be why I only see him as the bats, because I think Twilight probably put me off him forever.
Yeah. Hard Times is one of the most stressful film experiences I've ever had. He just keeps doing things, and you're just shouting at the TV for him to stop doing stuff, Robert Pattinson. You're making your life worse. Anyway, in our Green Lantern episode, @Toby Polar asked, which comic book character needs to be brought to the big screen that hasn't previously, and who should portray them? Hayley, let's start with you on that one.
Okay, so as there are announcements for casting all the time, I had a few which have actually been announced. So I wanted to see Gwendolyn Christie play any sort of comic book character, and she has from about 2 days ago. She's going to be in Sandman, Neil Gaiman, and she is playing Lucifer.
Yes.
So that's fun.
That's good casting as well, because in the comic book, Lucifer is a sort of... it's very much inspired by David Bowie, that androgynous look that he had in the 70s. And so, yeah, casting of Gwendolyn Christie as that character is really interesting.
And I would quite like to see Squirrel Girl. I just think it would be fun. I think definitely won't be the person who plays her because wrong age bracket. But I would think Kirsten Scholl. I don't know why. I just feel like that would work, but I think they would obviously be looking for like a teenager, not
presumably.
a 40-year-old woman. So also
maybe for a cartoon.
Yeah, voice acting, perfect. I think that would be great. Another one is Madam Web, who could potentially be in an upcoming Spider-Man film. My casting would be Jessica Lange.
Ooh.
And I think actually she would be perfect for that.
Okay. And Kate?
Well, I'm really glad that Hayley had loads, because I just don't know enough about comics in general to sort of know what the characters are that haven't yet been portrayed. Yeah, all of my knowledge comes from the TV shows and films that are already out, so that would be a tough one.
I did think that would be a problem. So you're probably not going to have much more luck with the next question, which, following on from that, is in our Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer episode, @Stuart Bobbitt on Twitter asked, which director would you want to see take on the project and do it justice? Kate, if you want to just have a think about this, maybe think of just a director you like who you'd want to see work on a superhero project. But Hayley, have you got any ideas for your projects?
I would like to see Edgar Wright actually direct a superhero film fully and completely, so write it and direct it. So not like Ant-Man. I would also like to see Taika Waititi just do more. But I know he's doing Thor and he's continuing to do Thor, but I just think he's a good director, so I would just like to see more of his work.
And Kate, do you have an answer to this one?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm not really down with the directors. I can't say it's something that really excites me about films, but I would love to see Tim Burton do one.
I mean, he did do Batman and Batman Returns.
Cool. Then I'd like to see him do more. Literally, that just goes back to what I said, though. I just don't care enough about who directs them. I should, but...
To be fair, that was in the 80s. But yeah, it would be quite nice to see him to come back and do more.
But on that subject, in the same episode, @It'sKirstyB asked, who is your favourite movie Batman?
Do I have a favourite movie, Batman?
That's the question.
Yeah, I love Val Kilmer just because he's fit AF.
I'm a big Val Kilmer fan. I don't think he's the best Batman, but I think he made quite a good Bruce Wayne, but not a very good Batman, funnily enough.
I'm not bothered, he's still cute.
Hayley?
I agree. I'm also going to throw it out there, George Clooney, just because that film just makes me laugh so much. It just I'm not saying it's the best. It's not
Good.
the best. It's just actually just comedy. I've never laughed so much.
Good.
I thought I would throw in a curveball. So this is for all of you. If you could have any superpower, which superpower would you have? Hayley, you'll go to you first.
Probably teleportation. I just want to get to places quickly and not have to worry about it. Yeah, that's it. I thought about this before.
Fair enough. And Iain?
So is it just one power or one character's powers?
Just a superpower overall, not copying a character, just like if you had a power.
I'm going to go with then reality manipulation, because that pretty much can do whatever the plot requires it. Or like Doctor Strange, magic. Magic is my power.
That's a good point. Because if you're a magician, then you can also teleport. So are you going to rectify my answer? I want to be a magician.
And Kate, we'll come to you.
It would have to be a toss-up between teleportation, because then maybe I wouldn't be late to everything, or, in that same vein, time manipulation. Usually the one I'd go for would be like, being able to read minds?
Telepathy.
Telepathy, yeah. Probably most likely would have to be telepathy.
Yeah, okay. Mine would either be teleportation or super speed, because like Hayley said, you just want to get there fast or just appear there.
Fair enough. I mean, you could just also go for like the power of just being really rich, of shitting money, and then you wouldn't have to worry about being late to meetings and things.
Be quite uncomfortable though. Hold on, are we talking notes or coins?
Let's say notes, but let's say bankers' drafts.
Credit card.
Bitcoins.
Yeah. Okay, and last of all, just not in time for X month for us, Marvel Comics have announced that they're doing a poll for the last member of their X-Men team. So they've thrown up a poll, and we thought we would ask your opinions. Kate, I get the feeling this is going to be a bit difficult because you won't recognise the names of any of these characters,
Might surprise
but
you.
gut feeling, let's pick a character. So, the X-Men election for the last member of the X-Men team. Choose one vote per person. You have the options: Banshee, Polaris, Forge, Boom Boom, Tempo, Cannonball, Sunspot, Strong Guy, Marrow, and Armour. Do you recognise any of those? Do you want to vote for any of those?
I can't remember the ones you said. What was the first one?
It was Banshee.
Banshee. I would have to go for Banshee because I've relatively heard of them.
Okay.
Or Strong Guy because that is such a good name. I wonder what his power is.
I think he can fly.
The best bit about that is he came up with that name just to be a bit sarky in the comic books. Basically, they told him he needed a name and he just went, well, my name's Strong Guy then. And Hayley?
I am leaning towards Sunspot, again just because I know the character from various iterations, but also Marrow, because I literally just found out about this character through this poll and was reading up on this character and just seemed quite cool. Kind of gross, but quite cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a character who can break off her extruding bones and throw them at people.
Yeah, kind of gross and kind of cool.
Does she grow them back?
Yes. Well, they sort of grow out through her skin in weird jagged things and then she can snap them off. And
Oh, all right.
thank you for that. And thank you very much for coming on this week's show, all in aid of Valentine's Day. It's very nice to have you on, have a different perspective on things. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
You are indeed very welcome. Thanks for having us.
It'll never happen again.
And we're real.
Yes, they do have girlfriends.
Just.
And that's all from us. Flourish.
Flourish.
And that's all for us for Valentine's Day. Thank you once again to Hayley and Kate for coming on, and thank you for listening. You can send your questions for Ask the Teapot to becometheteapot@hotmail.com or tweet us at becometheteapod. We hope that you enjoyed this deviation from the norm, but don't get used to it, because next episode we'll be returning to business as usual. And that's not the only thing that's returning. Yes, in honour of The Walking Dead returning to our screens, I'm going to be getting Iain acquainted with the first season. As usual, he's not read the comic, but he's also not seen the show either. So will he like it? Tune in next week to find out.
It's a good job that you can edit this so you can make sense.
And that there is the outro clip.